Is that too loud? I don't know if you can hear me very well. I'm trying to make some lunch here, but I want to vlog at the same time. Whatever, let's try it anyways. As I was preparing to make my curry for lunch there today, I started to think in Nepali. Not think in Nepali, but I kept remembering Nepali words like gulyo, which is sweet, and mito cha, which means it's tasty. And it occurred to me that the very first words that I learn in a language, and the words that stick with me the longest, all relate to food. Now, they're not all directly related to food. For example, the one French phrase that I remember is "Est-ce que je peux aller aux toilettes?" And that's, "May I use the bathroom, please?" I mean, I guess it's functional, but most of the individual words that I remember in French are all foods, like fromage, poisson, and cornichon, which I'm saying terribly, I know, because I don't really speak French. When I got to high school, I gave up on French and languages more or less in general, but when I got to university, I had to do 2 language credits, so I decided to do German. And, you know, the very first word that I learned in German, besides a few curse words and whatever gets yelled at me during Call of Duty games, was SCHWARZWALDKUCHEN. And that's German for Black Forest cake. I didn't set out to learn SCHWARZWALDKUCHEN first. I just somehow discovered it in my textbook as I was browsing through it like a day or 2 before class. And it just stuck at me, and I just couldn't forget it. And back in those days, I used to play a lot of Call of Duty 2, which was set in the Second World War. So sometimes you actually were the German team, but even if I was like the Americans or the British or like the Russians, I would still use SCHWARZWALDKUCHEN as my battle cry, just because it just sounded awesome. SCHWARZWALDKUCHEN! I remember, I think when Call of Duty 3 came out, I ended up playing a game online where I ended up paired with 3 German guys on my team. So it was me and 3 guys chattering away in German, and ironically enough, I think we were actually playing as the Americans. But anyways, I remember I shouted that out once, and then I realized that they were Germans. And I'm fairly certain that by the end of the game, these 3 German guys must have come to the conclusion that some institution somewhere in Germany had gotten Xbox Live for the residents. Something else I kind of got from German was this phrase, "Wo ist mein Löffel?" And the story behind that one is actually, I was sitting at the university center one day, and I was practicing my German. I was studying a little bit before a test or after a class where we had learned prepositions or something like that. And so I would ask myself, "Wo ist mein Löffel? Where is my spoon?" It was the only kind of object that I had within reach. And so I would say, "Mein Löffel ist über mein Kopf." And so some of my friends seemed to think that was funny, and that basically became my catchphrase. I've got a friend named David, and he ended up going to Europe, and he was backpacking around with a few of his friends. And I hope it's okay that I'm telling this story, but he was one of the people who thought that, you know, "Wo ist mein Löffel" is very, very funny. So while he was, I think, in Germany, he went into a restaurant or something like that, and he ordered soup. And they gave him a bowl of soup, but like nothing else. And so he kind of apparently looks across the table and asks this waiter guy, "Wo ist mein Löffel?" And so this kind of guy goes, "Oh," and hands him a spoon. And of course, David he's not the kind of guy who would set out to find that situation where he could say that phrase, but of course, he is exactly the person who would find a use for it in everyday conversation. So I thought that story was very, very funny. Anyway, so ends the first phase of my curry cooking, and so ends my meditations upon the languages that I don't really speak, but sort of kind of can say hello in. And so yeah, I feel a little bit bad about not blogging or vlogging last week, but no one seems to really care or mind, so I'm going to try not to feel bad about this, and I'm going to go and make the rest of my curry so that I can have a beautiful lunch, and so I can do some chores around the house. Goodbye, or auf Wiedersehen? I don't know if I said that right. I probably didn't. Goodbye anyways.